Hoops! Hoops!
Hi everyone, welcome back to English with Max. In this video, we are going to look at prepositions. Yes, along with phrasal verbs, prepositions are one of the most frustrating things for people learning English. Is it on Christmas or at Christmas? Is it in June or on June?
English is stupid.
Thanks, Frank. Today we are going to look at the most common prepositions of time. In, at, and on. Prepositions of time are actually a lot easier than prepositions of place because there are some very concrete rules. Yay! Just a quick reminder before we start that you can also follow me on social media. I now also have a TikTok account, so if TikTok's your thing, you can follow me there as well. If you have an intermediate to advanced level of English, you might also be interested in my free advanced English email lessons. You'll find the link in the description. We're first going to look at in. Generally speaking, we use in for periods of time. For example, months. In June. George met his girlfriend in June. We also use it for seasons. For example, in winter. George met his girlfriend in winter. Yes, in Australia, June is in winter. We use it for weeks as well. For example, George met his girlfriend in the second week of winter. We use it for years. In 1986. I was born in 1986. If you are wondering about my age, now you know. We also use it for decades and centuries. In the 1980s, for example. You can also just say in the 80s. In the 20th century. One way to help you remember this is to perhaps imagine it physically. For example, we say in the swimming pool. We say in because you are surrounded by something. In this case, you are surrounded by the water and the walls of the pool. If you say in June, you are, in a way, surrounded by the month. We haven't quite finished with in yet. There are a few more things to know. We use it for periods of the day. We say in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. An exception to that rule is with the word night. We say at night. We also use in for historical periods of time. We say in the Ice Age, in the Middle Ages, in ancient times. Then there are periods of time that aren't as clearly defined. We say in the past and in the future. If you can believe it, Frank was naughtier in the past than he is today. Just a couple more points. We use in to talk about how long we need to do something. For example, they finished the job in a month. That means that it took them a month to finish the job. The report took me 4 hours, but I'm sure I could have done it in 2 hours if I hadn't checked my email every 10 minutes. We also use it to talk about the end of a period of time in the future. For example, I'll be at the bar in half an hour. That means that if it is now 8 o'clock, I'll be there at 8:30. Another example, George is going to Sydney in 2 weeks. That means that if today is the 1st of April, he's going to Sydney around the 15th of April. Okay, now let's look at. Firstly, we use at for precise moments, such as times of the day. At 5 o'clock. At 3:30. Many people finish work at 5 o'clock. Frank finishes work at 3:30.
Yep.
At noon. At midday. In case you didn't know, noon and midday mean exactly the same thing. At midnight. At sunrise. At sunset. At dawn. At dusk. At lunchtime. In informal language, we often just say at lunch. I'll see you at lunch. We also use at for holidays and festivals if they last more than one day. For example, at Christmas, at Easter, at New Year's. When we think of Christmas, we don't normally just think of the 25th of December. Christmas celebrations often last 2 or 3 days. Just like if we say New Year's, we normally mean the 31st of December and the 1st of January. If we're talking about a specific day, we use on. On Christmas Day, for example. As usual, Frank drank too much on Christmas Day. But we'll look at that more closely when we see the rules for on. In British English, at is also used before weekend. I'll see you at the weekend. In American English, it's normally on the weekend. And in Australia, we also usually say on the weekend. There are also a few expressions that we always use with at, and you just have to know them. For example, if two things happen concurrently, we say at the same time. Frank and George never wake up at the same time. Frank always sleeps in. We also say at the moment, which means now or at present. For example, call him later because he's working at the moment. She's from New York, but at the moment she's living in Los Angeles. You can say in the moment, but it has a different meaning. We say in the moment if there is a focus on the present. A common phrase is to live in the moment. To live in the moment means to pay special attention to what is happening right now without thinking about the past or the future. Similarly, we say at present, which is another way of saying at the moment. It's just a little more formal than at the moment. We can say in the present, but the meaning is different. In the present is just like saying in the moment. For example, you should try to live in the present and not worry so much about the future. To summarize, at the moment and at present mean now. And we use in the moment and in the present if we are actively focusing on what is currently happening. And now it's time for on. Apart from in a few fixed expressions, we basically just use on for days and dates. So we say, on Monday. Frank got arrested on Monday. If you sometimes forget which preposition to use with days, try to think of Monday, because it also has on in the middle. On Monday. On Sundays. On Sundays, I often go to the beach. We usually use the plural, so Sundays and not Sunday, if it's for a habit or something that happens regularly. Now here is something that can be a bit confusing. We also use on for parts of the day if a day of the week comes before it. For example, on Monday morning. I have an appointment on Monday morning. We don't say in Monday morning. On Wednesday afternoon. On Friday evening. On Saturday night. Another thing that can be a bit confusing is that in spoken and informal English, we often drop the on when it's in front of a day. Let's look at these sentences again. We can also say, Frank got arrested Monday. Sundays, I often go to the beach. I have an appointment Monday morning. As I said, we also use it in front of dates. For example, on the 1st of April. Many people play jokes on their neighbours on the 1st of April. On the 23rd of October. Be careful. In British English, we normally write dates like this, but we don't say them that way. For the first one here, we would say on the 1st of April. On the 1st of April. For the second one, we would say on the 23rd of October. On the 23rd of October. Here are some more examples with on. On my birthday. My boyfriend broke up with me on my birthday. On Christmas Day. On New Year's Eve. Remember that for special holidays and festivals, we also use at. But we use at when we are talking about the general period. For example, if you say, I saw Frank at Christmas, it might mean that you saw him on the 24th of December, on the 25th, on the 26th, or if you were really lucky, maybe you saw him on all of those days. We use on for specific dates. So we say on Christmas Day and not at Christmas Day because Christmas Day is the 25th of December. Just like we say on New Year's Eve because that's the 31st of December. We don't say at New Year's Eve. Now we're going to look at what we use with beginning, middle, and end. With beginning, you can either use at or in. So, at the beginning or in the beginning. You can also say at the end or in the end, but there's a small difference in meaning. We use at the end to talk about the last part of something. For example, at the end of the book, the two main characters get married. The motorcycle was invented at the end of the 19th century. In the end is similar to finally or eventually. Frank was considering becoming a K-pop singer, but in the end, he decided not to. Good choice, Frank. We looked everywhere for George, and in the end, we found him in the library. For middle, we always use in the middle. We're going on holiday in the middle of the year. Before we finish, I'd just like to mention one point that's very important. When we use last, next, every, this, or that, we don't use in, at, or on. For example, Ethel went to Sydney last October. We don't say in last October. He is starting his new job next Monday. We don't say on next Monday. Here it's just next Monday. She goes home every Christmas. I'm going to a party this weekend. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss any new videos. And if you'd like to practice using these prepositions, please write some sentences in the comments. See you next time. As I said, okay, now, just a quick, the water and the fuck's sake. Fuck. Bah. Prepositions. Winter. Now let's see the words on my birthday. On.
English is dumb.